Ethan Caldwell built a biotech empire from the glittering towers of Chicago's Gold Coast. But all the power in the world couldn't silence the ache in his chest, the ache of a son he believed died in a car crash 12 years ago. One cold night, after a brutal board meeting, Ethan took a walk through a dim alley just to breathe. That's when he heard it, a cough. Faint, desperate. He turned and saw a boy in a cardboard box, dirty hoodie, thin frame, and green eyes. Ethan froze. That streak of silver in the boy's hair? That was his. When the boy looked up, Ethan saw his past crash into the present. A faint scar across the boy's cheek, exactly like the one Ethan had as a child. His knees buckled. He wrapped the boy in his coat, drove straight to a hospital, ordered a DNA test. The results? Undeniable. This boy, Caleb, was the son Ethan mourned for over a decade. As guilt crashes down, Ethan faces the hardest truth of all. Caleb survived on the streets while he lived in luxury. Can he win the trust of a child who's never known comfort? Can a man of science fix a shattered bond of blood? And when the world finds out, will Ethan choose business or fatherhood? All Caleb has is a model rocket and a single hope, to fly toward something better. Subscribe to see this heartfelt story unfold. The rain tapped gently on the floor-to-ceiling windows of Ethan Caldwell's penthouse, blurring the glittering skyline of Chicago into ghostly shapes. 40 floors above the city, everything looked quiet, controlled. But inside Ethan's chest, something churned. He stood alone, jacket still on, the boardroom echoing in his mind. Arguments over a failed merger, disappointed stares, profit warnings, yet none of it compared to the ache that never left. 12 years ago, a car accident had taken his wife and infant son, or so they'd said. The fire, the wreckage, the closed casket. He had accepted it because the pain of doubt was worse than the certainty of death. Still, some nights like this one, the silence screamed. Ethan grabbed his umbrella but didn't open it. He needed the cold, the rain. He turned left out of the building, walking with no direction. Streetlights flickered, neon signs buzzed. Then, an alley. Dark, narrow, forgotten by the city's shine. Something about it made him stop. A soft cough. Barely audible, but it cut through the hum of traffic. He stepped closer. Another cough. Behind a dumpster, a cardboard box shifted. Ethan froze. A small shape inside, huddled, shaking. He crouched. "Hey, you okay?" Two green eyes peeked out, wide with fear. The boy was thin, too thin. A faded hoodie clung to his frame, soaked. One sleeve was torn. His hair, dark brown with a streak of silver at the temple, glinted under the streetlight. Ethan's breath caught. That silver streak. He had it too. "Can you tell me your name?" The boy didn't answer, just stared. Then Ethan saw it, a faint scar on his cheek, left side, same place Ethan had one, earned on a bike ride when he was 10. His voice cracked. "Oh my God." He reached out slowly, hands trembling. The boy flinched but didn't move away. "It's okay," Ethan whispered. "I won't hurt you." Tears filled his eyes, his heart pounded. He could barely see through the blur. "You're Caleb?" Still no answer, just those eyes. Without thinking, Ethan took off his coat and wrapped it around the boy. The fabric swallowed him. "We're going to the hospital," Ethan said. "You're freezing." He lifted the boy gently. Caleb's head rested on his chest, too weak to resist. Inside the car, Ethan dialed. "Dr. Fields, I'm on my way. I need a room. Pediatric, hypothermia." He glanced at the boy, who was now asleep, or unconscious. His next call was to his lawyer. "I need you to file for emergency custody and order a DNA test." A pause. "Ethan, are you saying, 'I found him,' or 'he found me'?" The private hospital entrance lit up as they arrived. Staff were waiting. Ethan didn't let go as they wheeled Caleb inside. Later, sitting outside the room, Ethan stared at the boy's jacket draped over a chair. He reached into the pocket. A piece of crumpled paper. A sketch. A rocket ship, hand-drawn in pencil, pointed at a cluster of stars. 3 stick figures stood beneath it, 1 tall, 2 small. Ethan's eyes filled again. 12 years of silence. 12 years of believing he had no son. Now, the scar, the eyes, the drawing, and a streak of silver. He leaned his head back against the wall. Everything had changed, and yet, something deep in his soul whispered, this was just the beginning. The hospital hallway smelled like antiseptic and midnight coffee. Ethan stood just outside the room, staring through the glass. Caleb lay still under layers of warm blankets, a saline line in his arm, his small frame barely shifting with each breath. A nurse passed quietly behind him. We stabilized his temperature. He was borderline hypothermic. He's sleeping now. Ethan nodded, voice stuck in his throat. He turned toward the window again, his gaze locked on the boy. His boy. 12 years. 12 empty birthdays. 12 Christmases where he bought no toys, set no place at the table. And now, there he was. Not a memory. Not a ghost. Flesh and breath and scarred cheeks. Ethan pulled out the drawing again. The rocket ship. The 3 stick figures. He traced the tallest one with his thumb. It wasn't random. The boy had drawn him. He whispered to himself, "You were looking for me." By morning, the sun had barely broken through the haze over Lake Michigan when Ethan's lawyer, Robert Langley, stepped into the hospital lounge, papers in hand. "I filed the emergency custody petition," Robert said, "and I've ordered a DNA test. Should have results in 72 hours. Ethan nodded. "Make it private, discreet lab, no media." Robert hesitated. "You really believe he's yours?" Ethan didn't answer. He just held out the drawing. Robert stared at it. "That's you," he said quietly. "He's got my scar, Rob. Left cheek, exact spot, same green eyes, and that streak. I had one just like it until I was 15. Robert exhaled. "I'll keep the paperwork moving." Later that day, Ethan sat beside Caleb's bed. The boy hadn't woken up yet, but his breathing had steadied. His fingers twitched now and then, as if reaching for something in a dream. The doctor entered, clipboard in hand. "He's malnourished, dehydrated, likely been on the streets for months, if not longer. Old injuries, poorly healed. No signs of substance use, thankfully." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What about identification?" The doctor shook her head. "No ID, nothing in his pockets, just that sketchbook." "Sketchbook?" She handed it over. Ethan opened the cover, page after page of pencil drawings. Rockets, stars, faces. One page stopped him cold. An older man in a suit, standing under a street lamp. The details were exact. Even the posture. He swallowed hard. "He's been drawing me. You might be the only face he remembers." The next evening, Ethan walked out of the hospital into the cold night. The same alley was only 6 blocks away. He needed to see it again, to understand. The city buzzed with life around him, but the alley was quiet, damp, forgotten. He stood at the edge, staring into the shadows. "What were you doing here, Caleb?" he murmured. A rustle behind him. "Sir?" It was a woman, thin jacket, sharp eyes. "You looking for that kid again?" Ethan turned. "You saw him?" "Couple nights ago. He sleeps back there sometimes, keeps to himself, draws on old receipts." "Did you ever talk to him?" "He asked for crayons once, said he needed color to find his dad." Ethan's breath caught. "Then he got sick, started coughing. I told him to get to a shelter, but he wouldn't go. Said he had to stay near the building with glass walls." Ethan knew that building. His office, all glass, all mirrors. The woman pulled something from her bag. He left this, said he didn't need it anymore. It was a small paper rocket, folded carefully, the tip torn. Ethan took it gently, his hands trembling. Back at the hospital, Caleb finally stirred. His eyes fluttered open, groggy, confused. Ethan leaned forward, the paper rocket in hand. "Caleb," he said softly. The boy blinked. "That's mine." Ethan nodded. "I kept it safe." A long pause. Then, in a rasp barely audible, Caleb asked, "Are you my dad?" Ethan's voice cracked. "I think I am." The paper rocket resting between them said what words couldn't. They had both been flying blind, but they had found each other. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of the monitors and a bedside lamp. Caleb sat propped up against the pillows, silent, eyes darting to the paper rocket Ethan had placed on the nightstand. His small fingers toyed with the edge of the blanket. Ethan pulled a chair closer, careful not to move too quickly. "You like rockets?" he asked gently. Caleb shrugged, eyes flicking away. "They go far, fast. Don't come back." Ethan's throat tightened. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I used to draw rockets, too. When I was your age, I wanted to be an astronaut until I found out I got motion sick." A tiny, almost invisible smile played at the corner of Caleb's mouth. Then it was gone. "You hungry?" Ethan asked. Caleb nodded slightly. "A little." Ethan stood. "I'll get something from the cafeteria. Pancakes okay?" Caleb paused. "Do they have jelly?" Ethan blinked. "I'll find some." In the hallway, Ethan exhaled deeply. Every word felt like walking a tightrope. He pulled out his phone and called Robert. "Any update on the DNA?" Robert's voice was low. "Results are being rushed. 48 hours, maybe less." "And the investigator?" "She found something. Call her." Ethan hung up and dialed. "Ms. Bellamy?" "Mr. Caldwell," she answered briskly. "You won't like this." "Tell me." "The crash. Your wife survived, but she checked herself out of the hospital 2 days later. No forwarding address, no record of the boy." Ethan's heart thudded. "Then what?" "She resurfaced in county records about a year later. Petty theft, missed court dates, then nothing. But a woman matching her description gave birth in a women's shelter. No father listed, no documentation filed. Caleb. Most likely. After that, he was placed in the foster system. Multiple placements, some abusive. He ran away twice, then off the grid." Ethan's voice dropped. "So, for 12 years, he was alive, and no one told me. I'm sorry. The system lost him." Ethan didn't speak. He ended the call and stood frozen in the corridor. Back in the room, Caleb had dozed off again, the paper rocket now in his hand. Ethan placed a small tray down. Pancakes, jelly in a plastic cup, orange juice. Caleb stirred. "You found jelly?" Ethan smiled. "Took some bargaining with the kitchen." The boy reached for it slowly. His fingers shook. "You said, your name's Ethan?" "Yes, Ethan Caldwell." Caleb studied him. "People say that name on the news." "I run a company," Ethan said. "Biotech." "What's that?" "We make medicine, help people." Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Did you help me?" Ethan's voice was soft. "I'm trying to." Caleb picked at his pancake. "I had a mom once. She left me at a bus station. Said she'd come back." Ethan clenched his fists beneath the table. "I waited 2 nights," Caleb whispered. "Then I stopped waiting." Silence filled the room, thick as fog. "I'm sorry, Caleb." The boy nodded. "She said my dad was dead." Ethan looked at him, tears threatening. "I thought you both were gone." Caleb blinked hard. "You're not?" "No, I'm here now, and I'm not leaving." Caleb's voice dropped. "They always say that." Ethan didn't answer. He just reached out and set the paper rocket between them again. "Then let this be our promise." The boy stared at it. After a long pause, he touched the rocket and whispered, "Okay." Outside the room, Ethan stood alone, staring out the window at the gray skyline. 12 years. A system that failed. A silence too long. But now, green eyes, a scar, and a paper rocket. And a boy who had waited. Ethan vowed. he would never wait again. Rain streaked the hospital windows as dusk crept over the Chicago skyline. Inside Caleb's room, the air was warmer now, less clinical, more human. A tray of half-eaten pancakes sat on the side table. The paper rocket, still slightly bent, rested near the boy's pillow. Ethan sat in the corner, watching his son breathe. 12 years hadn't erased the feeling. This quiet awe of seeing someone who looked so much like him, yet carried an entirely different world inside. Caleb stirred. "You've been here the whole time?" Ethan nodded. "Didn't want to leave you alone." Caleb looked away. "People say that. Then they disappear." Ethan walked over slowly, kneeling beside the bed. "I said it once. And I didn't know you were still out there, but I swear to you, I won't disappear again." The boy looked at him, unsure. "You sure you want me? I'm not easy." Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out a photo. A baby boy wrapped in a blue blanket, his newborn face scrunched, fists raised in the air. "I carried this with me. Always," Ethan whispered. "This is the last picture I ever saw of you. I thought it was the only one I'd ever get." Caleb stared. "That's me?" "Yeah. The day you were born." Caleb's fingers brushed the photo. He didn't speak for a long time. Ethan swallowed. "You have a scar. Right here." He pointed to his own cheek. "I got mine falling off a bike when I was 10. Caleb touched his face unconsciously. "It's the same place," Ethan said. "That. Your eyes. The silver streak. I didn't even need the test. I knew." The boy's voice cracked. "So, I didn't make it up. I wasn't crazy." "No, son," Ethan said, tears forming. "You were right, and I'm sorry no one believed you." Caleb blinked fast, but one tear escaped. He swiped at it with his sleeve. Just then, a soft knock. The doctor stepped in, holding a small folder. "Mr. Caldwell," she said gently, "I have the results." Ethan stood, breath caught in his throat. She handed him the file. "It's a match. 99.9%. The room blurred. Caleb looked at him, wide-eyed. "I told you," Ethan said through a choked smile. "You're mine." Caleb didn't smile. Instead, he asked, "What happens now?" Ethan paused. "Now? I take care of you." "But where?" Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't want to go back to the shelter." "You're not going back," Ethan said firmly. "I have a place, a home, with your name on the door if you want it." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Big home. Too big, probably, but we can fix that." Caleb hesitated. "Do I have to wear a tie?" Ethan laughed softly. "Only if we're building robots that like fashion." The boy smiled, a real one this time. Small, but brave. That night, as Caleb slept, Ethan stepped into the hallway and called Robert. "Start the formal custody filing," he said. "The DNA proof's in, but expect pushback. I want every legal angle covered." "There's more," Robert said. "I dug deeper into the mother's case. The foster system closed the file 5 years ago, declared him untraceable." Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. "He was right under our noses, sleeping outside my office." "I know. It's a miracle you found him." "No," Ethan said, staring through the hospital glass. "It's a second chance, and I won't waste it." Back inside, Caleb had rolled to one side. The photo Ethan gave him was under his pillow now. Next to it, the crumpled rocket. 2 symbols, resting close. One of the past, one of the future. And in between them, hope. Quiet, fragile, but real. The black SUV pulled up to the circular drive of the Gold Coast penthouse just after sunset. The doorman opened the back door, blinking as a boy stepped out. Barefoot, jacket too thin, eyes darting like he expected someone to yell. Caleb stood there, frozen. Ethan crouched beside him. "It's just home, Caleb. That's all it is." Caleb looked up at the towering glass building. "This whole place?" "No, just the top 2 floors." Ethan smiled. "But your room's the best one." Caleb didn't move. Ethan reached for his hand. You don't have to stay forever. Just tonight. See how it feels. Slowly, Caleb nodded. Inside the private elevator, Caleb clutched his old jacket tight to his chest. Ethan noticed the frayed patch near the collar, stitched by hand, probably by Caleb himself. The elevator dinged. When the doors opened, floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city glowing beneath them. A fireplace flickered quietly in the corner. The air smelled like fresh linen and lemon oil. Caleb stepped out and stopped. He turned slowly in a circle. This looks like a hotel. Ethan chuckled softly. Well, it's quieter than most hotels, and the snacks are better. Caleb walked toward the far window. You can see everything. Almost, Ethan said. But come on, I want to show you something. They passed through a hallway, and Ethan opened a white door at the end. The room inside was softly lit. A small bed with navy blue sheets. A telescope by the window. Shelves already filled with science books and model kits. On the desk sat a fresh sketchbook, and beside it, a new pack of pencils. Caleb stared, silent. I remembered what you drew, Ethan said. So I filled the room with things I thought you might like. You can change any of it. Paint the walls. Throw it all out if it doesn't feel right. Caleb stepped to the bed, slowly touching the edge of the comforter. No one's ever made me a room before. Ethan's chest ached. You deserve 10 of them. Caleb looked at him. Even if I don't say thank you right away. Ethan smiled. Even if you never do. There was a pause. Then Caleb whispered, Can I keep my old jacket? Of course. You can keep everything that matters to you. The boy sat on the bed, hugged the jacket tight. This was the only thing she left me. My mom. She gave it to me before she left the last time. Ethan nodded slowly. Then we take care of it. Together. A chime echoed through the penthouse. Ethan's phone. He glanced at the message. It was Robert. Court, date set. Emergency hearing. Next week. Ethan typed back, Be ready for a fight. He's not going back into the system. He put the phone away and returned to Caleb's room. The boy had crawled under the covers but left the sketchbook open. A new drawing had already begun. Still rough, just pencil outlines. A rocket again. But this time, the tall figure beside it held hands with the smaller one. Ethan cleared his throat. I ordered pizza. Hope you like pepperoni. Caleb's voice came softly from the bed. I like anything hot. Ethan walked to the door but stopped. Good night, Caleb. A pause, then, just loud enough to hear, Good night, Dad. Ethan froze, heart slamming in his chest. He didn't turn around, just gripped the doorframe with one hand, closing his eyes. A whisper of a smile tugged at his mouth. The battle wasn't over. The court date loomed. Trauma lingered. But in that small room, with a sketchbook and a voice calling him Dad, Ethan Caldwell had already won something far more valuable than any corporate deal. He had found his son, and his son had started to find him. The next morning, sunlight poured through the penthouse windows, warming the living room's white marble floor. Ethan stood at the kitchen counter, pouring orange juice into a glass, the quiet hum of the city below somehow less distant than usual. Caleb padded in silently, still in his hoodie and hospital socks. He paused at the doorway, eyes darting around like he didn't know if he belonged. Ethan smiled. You're up early. Caleb shrugged. Didn't sleep much. Too quiet. Ethan chuckled softly. Yeah, it's a different kind of quiet here. He set the juice on the table. I thought maybe we could go over to the observatory later, or the lakefront. Just walk. Caleb stared at the glass. Can we stay here for a while? I want to finish a drawing. Ethan nodded. Of course. Before he could ask more, his phone buzzed. It was the investigator, Michelle Bellamy. He stepped into the hallway to take the call. We tracked down her file, Michelle said. Caleb's mother, Anna, ended up in and out of treatment centers. 3 years ago, she was admitted under a different name. Ethan's jaw tightened. Where is she now? There was a pause. She passed last year, overdose, in a shelter on the south side. Silence hung heavy. She left behind one item, a worn notebook. There's a name scribbled inside, Caleb Caldwell. That's it. Ethan closed his eyes. Get it to me. After hanging up, he returned to the living room. Caleb was bent over the sketchbook, tongue poking out slightly in concentration. On the page was a new image, two figures building something together, a rocket, tall and sleek, still incomplete. You like rockets a lot, huh? Ethan asked gently. They're quiet, Caleb murmured, and they don't forget where they came from. Ethan sat across from him. I never stopped thinking about you, even when I didn't know where you were. Caleb didn't look up, but he said, You were rich. I thought, rich people don't lose stuff. Ethan leaned forward. I lost more than anyone could see. The boy looked at him then, long, quiet, searching. That afternoon, Ethan sat in his office, the notebook in his hands. Its cover was cracked, its pages soft at the edges. Inside were short phrases, some drawings, and scattered dates, but in the middle, one note stood out. If I disappear, tell him his name is Caleb. Tell him his dad was a good man. A single pressed flower was tucked between those pages, dry, fragile, and forgotten. That night, as Caleb drifted off in his new bed, Ethan placed the flower on the nightstand next to the paper rocket. Two relics, one from the mother who vanished, the other from the boy who returned. In the hallway, Robert called. Just a heads up, you'll face resistance. CPS will argue trauma, lack of maternal consent, instability. The courts might want to place him in temporary care during the hearing. No, Ethan said sharply. That boy is not leaving this house. You need something solid, Robert warned. Something that makes the judge see you're not just a grieving father with guilt. You need to show structure, a plan. Ethan looked through the glass wall into Caleb's room, where the boy slept with the sketchbook still open beside him. I'll give them a plan, Ethan said quietly. I'll give them everything. He hung up and grabbed his laptop, opening a new document. A bold title formed across the screen. Reintegration Plan. Caleb Caldwell. He typed deep into the night, laying out schedules, tutors, trauma-informed therapists, nutrition plans, everything Caleb would need. Not just for the court, but for the boy. The next morning, Caleb walked into the kitchen holding a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, he said. Ethan unfolded it. It was a drawing, him and Caleb on the rooftop, pointing at the stars. You think we can finish our rocket? Caleb asked. Ethan smiled, tears in his eyes. We already started. The courtroom was cold, lit by harsh fluorescent lights and surrounded by walls that felt closer than they should. Ethan sat stiffly beside his attorney, eyes fixed on the judge's bench. Across the aisle, a child welfare representative shuffled papers, avoiding his gaze. Caleb sat 2 rows behind Ethan, fidgeting with the sleeve of his jacket. He hadn't let go of it, not even once. Judge Morales entered briskly, setting down her gavel. This is a custody review hearing regarding the minor, Caleb Caldwell. DNA confirmation has been submitted. All parties ready? Robert rose. Yes, Your Honor. We are requesting immediate legal guardianship by Mr. Ethan Caldwell. The judge turned. Mr. Caldwell, I understand you've only recently found this child, after 12 years of separation. Ethan stood. Yes, Your Honor, but I never stopped grieving. I believed he had died in the same crash that took his mother. I found him by accident, living in an alley near my office. The CPS attorney stood. Your Honor, while we acknowledge the DNA match, we must consider the emotional trauma. The child has had no consistent parental structure for years. Placing him directly in Mr. Caldwell's custody, even with good intentions, could further destabilize him. Ethan's voice remained calm. He's not a project. He's my son. The judge looked up. Mr. Caldwell, what preparations have you made for his care? Ethan handed over a thick binder. This is a reintegration plan I created. It includes education arrangements, therapy, nutrition, sleep schedules, and even social integration steps. I've also secured a trauma-informed pediatric specialist to monitor his adjustment. She flipped through it briefly. Impressive. But it's not about logistics alone. Has the child indicated he wishes to remain with you? Everyone turned toward Caleb. The boy stood slowly, jacket still clenched in his arms. The judge leaned forward. Do you want to live with Mr. Caldwell? Caleb hesitated, then walked down the aisle and stood beside Ethan. He held up a folded piece of paper. I drew this. The judge took it gently. It was a picture of two hands, one large, one small, gripping the same pencil, sketching stars across a dark sky. That's us, Caleb said. He helped me draw again. No one's ever done that. The courtroom fell silent. Ethan knelt beside him, whispering, You didn't have to do that. Caleb whispered back, I wanted to. The judge cleared her throat. Very well. I'm granting temporary guardianship to Mr. Caldwell pending final review in 90 days. During this time, the child is to remain under the care and observation of the proposed reintegration plan. Ethan closed his eyes, relief rushing through him. As the gavel struck the bench, Caleb slipped his hand into Ethan's. Later, outside the courthouse, cameras had already begun to flash. Reporters surged forward, microphones outstretched. Mr. Caldwell, did you really find your son in an alley? Are you abandoning your role as CEO to raise him? Is this a publicity stunt? Ethan shielded Caleb with his arm, but Caleb tugged his sleeve. Let me say something, the boy whispered. Ethan nodded. Caleb stepped forward. He didn't find me to be famous. He found me because he was supposed to. He didn't run when I told him I was trouble. Then he held up the paper. And he knows how to draw stars. The reporters went still. Ethan bent down, smiling. You ready to go home? Caleb nodded. Can we build the rocket tonight? Ethan ruffled his hair. Absolutely. Let's get you some pizza first. As they walked away, the flashbulbs faded behind them. The paper drawing fluttered slightly in Caleb's hand, now creased but proudly held. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the questions, not the past. Just a boy, a father, and a future, still sketching itself into something whole. The penthouse was unusually quiet that morning. Ethan sat alone at the kitchen island, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. Across from him, Caleb's drawing from court still sat folded on the marble surface, two hands sketching stars. But something felt off. He hadn't heard Caleb's footsteps yet, no soft padding across the hardwood, no rustling from his room. He rose and walked quietly down the hall. Caleb's door was cracked open. Inside, the boy sat on the windowsill, curled up with his jacket balled under his chin. His eyes were fixed on the skyline, but they didn't seem to be seeing it. Ethan knocked softly. Hey, you okay? Caleb didn't turn. Do I have to call you Dad all the time? Ethan stepped in. No, you can call me whatever feels right. I just want you to feel safe. Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. What if I don't know how to feel anything? Ethan sat beside him on the sill, careful not to crowd him. You've been through things no kid should ever face. It's okay to feel nothing right now, or everything all at once. Caleb glanced at him. Do you ever feel like you failed? Ethan's breath caught. Every day, especially now. The boy nodded slowly. I had dreams about you. Before I even saw you. You were always blurry, but I knew you were real. Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver compass. He placed it in Caleb's hand. This was mine, he said. I carried it in my coat pocket the day you were born. When I thought I'd lost you, I kept it anyway, hoping it might still point me to you. Caleb stared at the compass, silent. Then he turned it over in his hand, the needle twitching gently. I think it worked, he said. That night, Ethan paced the living room, heart heavy. The custody hearing was done, but the weight hadn't lifted. Guilt lingered like a fog. He opened his laptop, ignoring the mountain of work emails. Instead, he searched for local therapists, specialists in childhood trauma. He booked a consultation. He didn't care how much it cost. Caleb's healing couldn't wait. Later, he sat on the couch, lights dimmed. Caleb walked in quietly and held something out. It was a drawing, unfinished, still in pencil. This one showed a rocket, but its parts were scattered. Not broken, just not yet assembled. "I don't know how to finish it," Caleb said. "Can you help?" Ethan took the page and studied it. "Maybe we build it one part at a time, like us." Caleb sat beside him. "I don't want to go back to the alley." "You won't," Ethan said firmly. "But what if you get too busy again?" Caleb asked. "What if I mess up?" Ethan looked him straight in the eye. "Then I'll stop everything. I'll drop work. I'll fix it. We'll fix it together." Caleb nodded, then rested his head against Ethan's side. The lights of the city blinked outside the window. For a long while, they sat in silence. Eventually, Caleb whispered, "Do you think Mom would have been proud I found you?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I think she'd be proud you never stopped believing." That night, Caleb placed the compass on his nightstand beside the paper rocket. 2 anchors. 2 symbols of a boy's hope and a father's promise. As the wind pressed against the glass windows, Ethan watched his son sleep, curled into the same jacket he'd worn in that alley. And he knew this wasn't the end of their healing. It was only the beginning. The penthouse was unusually quiet that morning. Ethan sat alone at the kitchen island, a mug of coffee cooling in his hands. Across from him, Caleb's drawing from court still sat folded on the marble surface, 2 hands sketching stars. But something felt off. He hadn't heard Caleb's footsteps yet. No soft padding across the hardwood. No rustling from his room. He rose and walked quietly down the hall. Caleb's door was cracked open. Inside, the boy sat on the windowsill, curled up with his jacket balled under his chin. His eyes were fixed on the skyline, but they didn't seem to be seeing it. Ethan knocked softly. "Hey, you okay?" Caleb didn't turn. "Do I have to call you Dad all the time?" Ethan stepped in. "No. You can call me whatever feels right. I just want you to feel safe." Caleb's voice was barely a whisper. "What if I don't know how to feel anything?" Ethan sat beside him on the sill, careful not to crowd him. "You've been through things no kid should ever face. It's okay to feel nothing right now, or everything all at once." Caleb glanced at him. "Do you ever feel like you failed?" Ethan's breath caught. "Every day. Especially now." The boy nodded slowly. "I had dreams about you. Before I even saw you. You were always blurry, but I knew you were real." Ethan reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver compass. He placed it in Caleb's hand. "This was mine," he said. "I carried it in my coat pocket the day you were born. When I thought I'd lost you, I kept it anyway, hoping it might still point me to you." Caleb stared at the compass, silent. Then he turned it over in his hand, the needle twitching gently. "I think it worked," he said. That night, Ethan paced the living room, heart heavy. The custody hearing was done, but the weight hadn't lifted. Guilt lingered like a fog. He opened his laptop, ignoring the mountain of work emails. Instead, he searched for local therapists, specialists in childhood trauma. He booked a consultation. He didn't care how much it cost. Caleb's healing couldn't wait. Later, he sat on the couch, lights dimmed. Caleb walked in quietly and held something out. It was a drawing, unfinished, still in pencil. This one showed a rocket, but its parts were scattered, not broken, just not yet assembled. "I don't know how to finish it," Caleb said. "Can you help?" Ethan took the page and studied it. "Maybe we build it one part at a time, like us." Caleb sat beside him. "I don't want to go back to the alley." "You won't," Ethan said firmly. "But what if you get too busy again?" Caleb asked. "What if I mess up?" Ethan looked him straight in the eye. "Then I'll stop everything. I'll drop work. I'll fix it. We'll fix it together." Caleb nodded, then rested his head against Ethan's side. The lights of the city blinked outside the window. For a long while, they sat in silence. Eventually, Caleb whispered, "Do you think Mom would have been proud I found you?" Ethan swallowed hard. "I think she'd be proud you never stopped believing." That night, Caleb placed the compass on his nightstand beside the paper rocket. 2 anchors, 2 symbols of a boy's hope and a father's promise. As the wind pressed against the glass windows, Ethan watched his son sleep, curled into the same jacket he'd worn in that alley. And he knew this wasn't the end of their healing. It was only the beginning. The penthouse was quieter than usual, but not silent. From the hallway came the sound of tinkering, metal clicking, light humming, pages flipping. Ethan followed it to Caleb's room, stopping just outside the door. Through the crack, he watched his son seated at the desk, piecing together a small science kit. Wires, circuits, and a plastic rocket lay across the table. Ethan knocked gently. "Mind if I join you?" Caleb didn't look up. "Sure, but I already tried the circuit. It's not working." Ethan stepped in and sat beside him. "Let's troubleshoot it together." For the next 20 minutes they worked side by side. Caleb's fingers moved quickly, confident despite the occasional frown. Ethan didn't touch the tools. He just offered suggestions, asked questions. Finally, the small motor whirred to life. Caleb grinned. "Told you it was the ground wire." "You did." Ethan smiled. "That's your win." Caleb glanced over. "At the group home, nobody let me do stuff like this. If I broke something, they just yelled." Ethan's voice softened. "Here, we fix things. Or try again." Later that afternoon, Ethan introduced Caleb to someone new, a soft-spoken woman named Miss Dina, a private tutor with a background in trauma-informed teaching. In the lounge, she laid out a few science magazines and a notebook. "We don't have to start with tests. Maybe we just talk about what you like." Caleb eyed the stack. "Do you have any books on aerodynamics?" She smiled. "I brought 2. Ethan watched from the doorway, a quiet pride blooming in his chest. That night, Caleb entered the kitchen with a page in hand. "Hey, look what I made." He held it up, his own version of a school schedule, sketched in pencil with stars drawn next to his favorite subjects. "Math, science, and free drawing time," Caleb explained. "I don't want to do gym. Is that okay?" Ethan crouched beside him. "That's more than okay. You're in charge of your own plan." Caleb looked down. "And therapy?" Ethan didn't flinch. "Only when you're ready." There was a pause, then Caleb whispered, "Maybe I'm ready next Tuesday." Ethan nodded. "Tuesday it is." Over the next week, transformation took shape in small moments. Caleb asked for new shoes. Still black, still simple, but this time they fit. He started eating full meals. He left his bedroom door open. And every night, before bed, he added a new drawing to his wall. Rockets, stars, machines, each one more detailed than the last. One evening, Ethan found a sketch of 2 people in lab coats, one tall, one smaller, standing under a chalkboard filled with formulas. The taller one had a badge labeled Dad. Caleb shrugged when he noticed Ethan looking. "I made us scientists." Ethan's throat tightened. "We look like a good team." But as peace settled in, outside pressures stirred. On Monday, Ethan arrived late to a board meeting. His CFO pulled him aside. "You missed the investor call. Again." "I had to walk Caleb to school," Ethan said. "It was his first day." The CFO lowered his voice. "You're CEO, Ethan. Your personal life is starting to bleed into projections. We've had 3 major accounts delay renewals." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Let them. I'm not missing this part of his life." The man sighed. "Some shareholders are calling for an emergency review of your leadership." Ethan said nothing. He returned home that night exhausted, mind spinning. Caleb was waiting with 2 cups of hot cocoa. "You okay?" the boy asked. Ethan forced a smile. "Work stuff. Grown-up drama." Caleb held up the compass. "Maybe this can help." Ethan laughed. "You think it knows where peace is?" "No," Caleb said, "but it pointed you to me." Ethan blinked, stunned by the weight of the words. The boy handed him a new drawing, this one of a rocket finally taking off, flames rising beneath it, stars stretching above. "We're building this one next," Caleb said. Ethan took a deep breath and nodded. Yeah, buddy. Let's build it together. The penthouse buzzed with quiet effort. Caleb sat at his desk, drawing a rocket stage with meticulous detail. His once guarded eyes flickered with curiosity, but Ethan noticed the signs. The way Caleb flinched when the elevator chimed, how he always sat with his back to a wall. Even with progress, the trauma lingered. That morning, Ethan brought home a soft box tied with a blue ribbon. Thought you might want to try these. Caleb opened it cautiously. Inside was a new hoodie, navy blue, simple, with a stitched rocket emblem near the pocket. He stared at it, then at Ethan. I already have a jacket. I know, Ethan said gently. This one's just an extra. You don't have to wear it. Caleb held it like it might disappear. Can I still keep the old one? Ethan nodded. Of course. That jacket's part of your story. Caleb didn't smile, but he didn't put it down either. Later, Ethan stood in the boardroom trying to focus. A presentation ran on screen. Numbers, projections, growth models. But his mind was at home. When the meeting ended, his CFO approached again. You missed the R&D call. We're losing momentum. I'm not losing Caleb, Ethan replied. We'll recover. I'm not doing this halfway. Back home, Ethan found Caleb sitting on the bathroom floor, eyes red, breathing shaky. Ethan dropped to his knees. Hey, what happened? Caleb looked up. The water in the shower. I thought I heard yelling, like back at one of the homes. Ethan wrapped his arms around him, holding him until his breathing slowed. You're not there anymore, Ethan whispered. You're safe, here, with me. That night, Caleb didn't sleep in his bed. He curled up on the floor beside it, old jacket pulled over his head. Ethan didn't push. Instead, he lay on the floor too, beside him, both of them silent under the dim light of the bedside lamp. I don't like the lights off, Caleb said suddenly. It makes the bad stuff louder. Then we leave them on, Ethan replied, as long as you want. In the morning, Caleb surprised him. He stepped into the kitchen wearing the new hoodie. He didn't say anything, just walked over and poured cereal into a bowl. Ethan smiled. Looks good on you. Caleb shrugged. It's soft. Later, Ethan took him to a nearby science museum. Caleb stayed close, but his eyes lit up as they entered the rocket gallery. He pressed his hands against the glass, staring at a vintage space capsule. They had to sit in that for hours? He asked. Sometimes days, Ethan said. But they knew where they were going, so they held on. Caleb nodded slowly. I think I could do that, if I had someone sitting next to me. You will, Ethan promised. On the way out, they stopped at the gift shop. Caleb picked up a small plush rocket, the kind you'd see in a toddler's aisle. Ethan raised an eyebrow. That one? Caleb hugged it to his chest. I like this one. Back at home, Caleb placed it on his nightstand, right next to the compass and the folded rocket sketch. 3 items, 3 anchors. That evening, Caleb pulled Ethan into the living room. Wanna see what I built? He led him to a cardboard rocket made from leftover boxes, complete with paper fins and string for thrusters. I call it the Redemption Shuttle, he said proudly, because it gets lost things back. Ethan crouched down and ran a hand over the side. You built this? Mostly. You helped, Caleb said. You bought the cereal box. They laughed, and for the first time the sound was unguarded. Then Caleb whispered, Thanks for not giving up, even when I made it hard. Ethan looked at the rocket, the compass, the boy. Thanks for letting me try again, he said. Every day. Caleb stood at the center of the living room, holding a circuit board like it was a piece of treasure. Wires dangled from both ends, and his face was smudged with pencil and pride. Look what I made, Dad, he said, eyes sparkling. Ethan looked up from his laptop, set aside the reports, and crossed the room. Is that a motorized switch? Yep. If you connect it here, Caleb pointed, it'll light up the rocket fins when I press the launch button. Ethan knelt beside him. That's incredible. You built this from the scrap bin? Caleb nodded. I didn't think it would work, but I kept trying. Ethan smiled, touched the side of the switch gently. Just like us, huh? They shared a quiet laugh. That evening, Ethan invited Caleb to his company's research lab. Closed for the weekend, but buzzing with prototypes and soft white lights. Caleb's eyes widened at the sterile space filled with microscopes, robot arms, and glowing biotanks. "This is where you work?" he asked. Ethan nodded. "Where I dream up cures, but lately, I've been dreaming more about rockets than vaccines." Caleb walked to a 3D printer. "Can we build something here together?" Ethan rested a hand on his shoulder. "We already are." The next few days became a rhythm of joy and challenge. Caleb thrived in his tutoring sessions and asked deeper questions at breakfast. But even as their bond grew, Ethan noticed something. The jacket. Caleb still wore it. Faded, frayed, too small now. But he refused to let it go. Even when he changed into school clothes, he'd tuck it into his backpack. At night, he slept with it folded under his pillow. Ethan never mentioned it. Until one night, after a long day at the lab, Caleb approached him. "I'm scared to let go of it," he said. "It's the only thing that stayed with me." Ethan nodded. "I get that. It's like your compass." Caleb looked surprised. "Like yours?" Ethan smiled. "Exactly. We both needed something to hold on to when the world didn't make sense." Caleb thought for a long moment. Then he said, "Maybe I can keep it, but still make room for new stuff." They sat together and folded the jacket carefully into a memory box. Caleb taped a note to the lid in blocky handwriting. "This helped me survive. Now I want to live." Later that week, Ethan took him to a local community science fair. They wandered through rows of student projects, solar cookers, recycled robots, weather balloons. One table caught Caleb's eye. 2 boys building a vinegar-propelled rocket. He walked over, watched silently, then stepped in to help tighten a valve. The boys looked up. "You know this stuff?" Caleb nodded. "I've been working on something like it at home." They made space, and for the first time since the alley, Caleb was just a kid, surrounded by peers, tinkering with things that made him feel smart. Ethan stood in the back, arms crossed, quietly wiping his eyes. When they got home that night, Caleb handed him a folded page. "Blueprint," he said, "for a real rocket. Maybe a school project?" Ethan opened it. Intricate diagrams, fuel stages labeled, and at the bottom 2 names, Caleb Caldwell and Ethan Caldwell. Ethan touched the page. "You put my name on it?" "Yeah," Caleb said shyly. "Team effort, right?" Ethan pulled him in. "Always." As they tacked the blueprint to the bedroom wall, right next to the compass and the plush rocket, Caleb whispered, "Thanks for giving me more than just a home." Ethan whispered back, "You gave me a reason to come home." And beneath the drawing, they wrote one final line in black ink. "Launch. When ready." The sun filtered softly through the penthouse windows as Ethan stood by the kitchen counter, pouring 2 glasses of orange juice. Caleb sat at the dining table, fiddling with the compass Ethan had given him weeks ago. He traced its edge with his thumb, then glanced at the TV behind Ethan. The screen was filled with headlines. Millionaire CEO discovers son living on streets. Caldwell biotech stock takes a dip amid CEO's personal crisis. Ethan muted it, but the damage was done. "Is that about us?" Caleb asked. Ethan set the glasses down. "Yeah, I'm sorry you saw that." Caleb looked away. "People think I ruined your job?" Ethan leaned forward. "No, they don't know our story, and the ones who do, they see how brave you are." Caleb nodded slowly, but his shoulders slumped. That afternoon, Ethan walked into a boardroom full of icy stares. Shareholders lined the table, led by Douglas, the COO. "You've been absent from 3 investor calls," Douglas said. "Our stock is slipping. People are nervous." Ethan sat down calmly. "I'm still leading this company. I've just added a new mission, being a father." One woman leaned in. "Are you suggesting that's more important than your shareholders?" "I'm saying," Ethan replied, voice steady, "that no company matters if I can't face my son and say I showed up when it counted." The room fell silent. Meanwhile, Caleb waited in the penthouse lobby, wearing his new hoodie and holding a folder. The receptionist smiled kindly. "Big day?" He nodded. "Science fair application. It's due tomorrow. Dad said we'd finish it tonight." Upstairs, Ethan wrapped up his meeting. Outside the building, however, a paparazzi crew was waiting. Cameras flashed as he stepped onto the sidewalk. "Mr. Caldwell, is it true you found your son in a box? Will he inherit the company?" Ethan pushed through, his face tight with emotion. That night, Caleb handed him the folder. "Do you still want to do this?" Ethan looked up, weary but sincere. "More than ever." They opened the folder together. Caleb's plan was titled, "Shelter Rocket, a model for emergency housing that unfolds like a space pod." Ethan blinked. "This is genius." Caleb grinned. "You think it could work? With the right team? Absolutely." Later, as they cleaned up, Ethan's phone buzzed. A headline read, "Caldwell's company under review. Insiders question CEO's priorities." He turned off the screen. "What's wrong?" Caleb asked. Ethan took a breath. "Some people think I'm not doing a good job anymore." "Because of me?" "No," Ethan said firmly, "because I started doing the most important job." Caleb was quiet, then said, "Then maybe they need a better compass." Ethan smiled. "That's exactly what I was thinking." The next morning, Ethan met with his PR team. "I want to speak," he said, "not just to investors, to everyone." They looked surprised. "About your son?" "Yes," Ethan said, "and about all the kids out there who don't have someone to show up for them." Back home, Caleb finished assembling the final stage of his rocket model. He taped a note to the nose cone. "Launch when someone believes in you." He placed it beside the compass and the memory box, symbols of what was lost and what was now being built. Ethan stood behind the podium, the city skyline behind him through the glass wall of the conference hall. Cameras clicked. Reporters murmured. His heart pounded, not from nerves, but from meaning. He looked down at Caleb's compass in his palm, the one his son had given him the night before. Its needle trembled, like it felt the weight of the moment, too. "I used to think success was measured in quarterly gains and biotech breakthroughs," Ethan began, his voice steady. "But everything changed the night I walked into that alley." A hush fell. "My son, Caleb, was presumed dead 12 years ago. He wasn't. He was surviving on the streets while I sat in a glass tower." He paused. "No child should ever be invisible." A ripple moved through the audience. "I want to do more than raise my son. I want to honor the millions of children like him." He gestured to a chart beside him. It read, 1.5 million homeless children in the U.S. He continued, "We're launching the Caldwell Shelter Initiative, a nonprofit that will fund mobile housing, trauma counseling, and education programs for homeless youth. We'll partner with schools and local science clubs because every child deserves curiosity, not cold pavement." Reporters raised their hands, but Ethan wasn't finished. "I'm still CEO, but I'm also a father now, and I plan to lead with both mind and heart." Backstage, Caleb watched through the curtain. He gripped a small drawing, a simple sketch of a rocket labeled Hope. After the press conference, Ethan knelt beside him. "How'd I do?" Ethan asked. Caleb shrugged shyly, then smiled. "Better than good." Ethan laughed, ruffling his son's hair. That evening, Caleb sat on the penthouse balcony, tinkering with wires on a model rocket base. "Why do you think it matters so much?" he asked, not looking up. "What?" Ethan said, sitting beside him. "This," Caleb motioned, "helping kids." Ethan took a breath. "Because someone should have helped you, and if I can stop one kid from sleeping in a box, maybe I can live with myself." Caleb nodded slowly. "Do I get to help too?" Ethan smiled. "That's the plan. You and me, co-founders." Caleb looked stunned, then proud. He reached into his hoodie and pulled out the drawing. "I made this during your speech. Maybe we can use it for the logo." Ethan unfolded it. A stick-figure boy stood under a giant rocket-labeled launch shelter, stars around him. "It's perfect," he whispered. "You drew our mission." They sat in silence as the city twinkled below them. The next day, Ethan and Caleb toured a local shelter. The director, a woman named Marcy, led them past cribs, bunk beds, and backpacks with names. "Some of these kids were just dropped off by a bus driver," she said. "They had nowhere else to go." Caleb reached for Ethan's hand. "Can we do more, Dad?" Ethan nodded. "We will." Marcy paused. "You're the first donor who's actually shown up with his child. That means something." Caleb smiled. "He shows up a lot." That night, Ethan tucked the drawing into a frame, placing it beside the compass and a photo of their first science fair together. Each item, worn, honest, symbolic, reminders of pain and promises made. The launch pad sat in the middle of the rooftop garden, surrounded by fairy lights and folding chairs. Ethan adjusted the nose cone on Caleb's model rocket while a small crowd gathered. Staff, shelter volunteers, and a few young kids from the new program. Caleb stood beside him, wearing a navy hoodie with the launch shelter logo embroidered on the sleeve. His drawing brought to life. "You ready, Commander?" Ethan asked, glancing down at his son. Caleb grinned. "Mission control is go." Ethan chuckled, then nodded to the gathered children. 3, 2, 1. With a hiss and a flash of light, the model rocket soared upward, disappearing into the night sky. Cheers erupted. Caleb looked up, eyes reflecting the spark of the rocket trail. "Think it reached the stars?" Ethan put an arm around him. "It reached everything that matters." The rooftop turned into a celebration. Kids sipped cocoa. A local jazz duo played softly in the corner. Marcy, the shelter director, approached with tears in her eyes. "Ethan," she said, "what you've built, it's already changing lives." "It's not just me," Ethan replied. "It's Caleb's heart, his courage. I just followed it." Later, in the penthouse, Ethan opened a small wooden box he'd kept locked for 12 years. Inside was a baby photo, Caleb swaddled and yawning. Beside it, he placed the framed drawing and the compass. Caleb entered quietly, holding a folder. I wanted you to see this." Ethan opened it. Inside was a diagram for a water purifier, hand-drawn and labeled in Caleb's neat print. "I figured if we're going to help kids," Caleb said, voice low, "some of them might not have clean water." Ethan blinked fast, swallowing hard. "You're amazing," he whispered. "You know that?" Caleb shrugged, a shy grin tugging at his lips. "I just don't want to forget where I came from." "You won't," Ethan said, "because we're building something that remembers for you." That weekend, they hosted their first science workshop at the shelter. Ethan watched as Caleb led a group of younger kids, explaining circuits with the same fire Ethan once had in his garage as a boy. One little girl raised her hand. "Do you really live in a big tower?" Caleb laughed. "Yeah, but it's not the building that matters, it's who's waiting inside." The children clapped when Caleb showed them how to light a bulb with a lemon battery. That night, as they walked home, Caleb stopped on a quiet street corner. The same corner Ethan had crossed weeks ago, when he'd heard that cough. Caleb pointed. "That box, that's where I used to sleep." Ethan's chest tightened. "I remember." Caleb pulled something from his jacket pocket, and a tiny, battered stuffed dog, its ear chewed, fur worn thin. "I kept him the whole time," Caleb said, "even when I thought no one would ever find me." Ethan knelt, reaching out. "May I?" Caleb nodded, and Ethan gently held the toy. "I'm never letting go again," Ethan whispered. As they walked on, Caleb slipped his hand into Ethan's. The penthouse lights shimmered ahead like a lighthouse. Their journey had begun in a dark alley, but now they were walking home, together.